process work is one of the foundational philosophies, I guess you could call it, of age song. And so what does it mean? I'm going to show you what process work means. Before I show you what process work means, let's have a little taste of something. So imagine for a moment that you're on the floor here at Age Song. Imagine you're on the floor. Just imagine that. And imagine, some people are closing their eyes to imagine that. That's good. If you imagine better with your eyes open, that's also good. Whatever you want. And look around in your inner imagination at the different elders that you see in your imagination. Look around at some of those elders. And notice who catches your attention. Maybe it's somebody you actually saw when you were on the floor. Maybe you notice somebody who actually is here or was here when you were looking around. Maybe it's just somebody in your imagination. Who catches your attention? Just study that person for a moment and notice, what are your reactions to that person? What reactions do you have? Good reactions, not so good reactions? Just notice that. Now, imagine being that elder for a moment. Sit like that person, or move like that person just for a second. Let your face change into his face or her face. Your face may get a little bit weird, be in a way you're not accustomed to. It's okay, most people have their eyes closed. Nobody's going to think anything. Yeah. And feel into that person's body and mind. And I want to ask you, dear elder, what do you need? Notice what you, dear elder, need. Yeah. You might want to write down a few words about that. Jot down a word or two about what you feel you need as that elder. Yeah. And maybe somebody could say, while we're writing it down, what did you need as that elder?
I just wanted someone to be with me.
Yeah, somebody to be with you. Company.
Space.
Space.
To go home.
Home. Mm-hmm.
Peacefulness, quiet.
Peace and quiet. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. These are all, these are among the many needs that people have here. That's right. That's right. Also, great one. That's right.
I need someone to listen to me.
Yes. An ear and an open heart. Yes. That's right. So one of the things that we did is we're finding out about what some of the needs are. The other thing that we did is that we're doing one of the basic things of process work is realize, oh, I have another question for you. I forgot about this question. Do you need any of those things? Yeah. Do you recognize in the thing that you noticed that the other person needed, do you recognize something of yourself? Yes. So that's one of the basic things that we're you're going to notice here over the year is that your clients, your residents, are not just them, that they're also you. And that's one of the foundations of what we're doing here, that what's happening is non-local, let's say. It's not just located out there, it's everywhere. Okay, so one of the basic orientations, as I said, of age song is process work. And I'm going to show you what process work is. Process work was developed by a guy named Arnold Mindell. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, probably not. He is my teacher and my mentor. I've studied with him for many, many years and been teaching process work all over the world for many years. And by the way, I have a list of articles, and I'm going to be training you once a month. I'm one of the trainers here, and I'm going to be training you in process work once a month at your different sites, wherever you are, some in Wood Park and some here in San Francisco. And I'm going to be emailing you one or two short articles about a week before each training, and that would be amazing if you could read those articles. That'll help keep you more involved in what's going on, up to date, understanding the trainings, and have some kind of an orientation. Okay, so Arnold Mindell was a Jungian analyst and a trainer at the Jung Institute in Zurich. And then he started to notice that the things that happen in people's dreams, the Jungians are really interested in dreams, that the things that happen in people's dreams are mirroring what's happening in their bodies. And he developed this whole thing called process work. So now I'm going to show process work, because some people don't like intellectual stuff. I'm going to show it. Normal life is, we want things to be a certain way, and we want them to go in a certain way. And then something happens that pulls us off course. Sorry, I hope I'm not going to mess up your microphone here. Okay. So, for instance, I want a healthy body. And then I end up getting sick, right? I want a good relationship. And my partner keeps getting into fights with me, or I can't find a partner. I want to be able to create something, but I've got stage fright, or I've got writer's block. I want to be able to do something, and something else pulls me off course. I want to live, and I'm in the dying process. I want to remember, and I keep forgetting. Right? There's a lot of different things like that. Now, normally, if you're like me and everybody else in the world, when that pull comes, you push it away and keep trying to go your direction. That's normal life, right? Right? You get sick, so you take a pill, right? You are having troubles in your relationship, so you try to fix the other person. Or write something, right? You try to make something so you can keep going in your direction. Process work has the radical notion that when that pull comes, that you turn in the direction of the pull and you let it lead you. That's the basis of process work. Basically, everything else I'm going to be teaching you in the next year is just a riff on that basic theme. There's an ancient idea that comes from China. It's called the Tao. Lao Tzu wrote about the Tao originally. The first thing he said is the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. And then he went on and he wrote a whole book about it, which I thought he was a bit of a trickster. So anything that I say about it is going to be wrong, but this is what I'm going to say about it anyway. I imagine the Tao as something like a hidden wind that blows through everything, that moves everything in its path. There's something happening. We can't see it, but it's going in things are going in a certain direction, right? Things are going in a certain direction. Now so you're moving through life and you notice things are going in a certain direction. That may not be the direction you want to go, but it's going in a certain direction. The ideal of the Taoist is to become one with the Tao. That means to align oneself with the Tao. That means you notice that things are going in a certain direction and you align yourself with the Tao and you let the Tao move you, right? That's basically similar to the last thing I just showed. Just different people learn in different ways, so I'm showing it in a different way. Now I'm going to say the whole thing in a different way. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who developed analytical psychology, Jungian psychology, talked about dreams. He said that dreams are a compensation for a one-sidedness. That's kind of a complicated sentence, so I'm going to say it again. Dreams are a compensation or a balance to a one-sidedness. That means if I'm one-sided in this direction, my dreams are going to show me something that's going to balance that one-sidedness. Now, he also said something that blows your mind, or mine. He said, we're always dreaming, not just when we're asleep. In other words, everything that happens is a dream. In other words, what's happening is a compensation for our one-sidedness. What happens is trying to balance us being one-sided in another way, which is really the same thing that I just showed in two other ways, right? I'm one-sided in this way, and something's happening that's going to balance my one-sidedness, that's going to show me about my wholeness, okay? So those are all different ways of talking about process work. Now, as I said, Arnie Mindell realized that the things that are happening in the body mirror the things that are happening in our dreams. That's that same kind of idea, right? That if I have a body problem, let's say I don't know, I'll talk about a real example. So Arnie talks about this client who he had when he was living in Switzerland and just starting to develop this stuff. This client had a tumor in his belly, and he was in the hospital with a tumor. And Arnie went to visit him in the hospital. It's a little unusual for a Swiss psychologist, but he went to visit him in the hospital. And Arnie said, "How are you doing?" The guy said, "Oh, the tumor, it hurts so much." Arnie said, "What's it like?" He said, "It's like a big pressure. It presses on me so much." So there's an idea in Jungian psychology, they call it amplification. Amplification means, right, if you want to amplify a guitar, you turn up the volume, right? So you make it a little bit bigger so you can hear it. So Arnie thought, oh, there's a pressing happening. Let's amplify that a little bit. So Arnie said, put your hand on the tumor and press it a little bit if you don't mind. The guy put his hand on his tumor and he started to press it a little bit. He said, oh, it feels like a bomb about to explode. And then the guy said, oh my God, I had a dream last night that there was a bomb that was about to explode and that would be medicine for my tumor. And Arnie thought, this is strange. This was the very beginning of him developing these ideas. He said, really? there's an explosion that's about to happen, and that's a medicine for your tumor? And the guy said, yeah. And so Arnie said, do you like exploding generally? Are you good at exploding? And the guy said, no, no. He was a Swiss guy from the German part of Switzerland that's, you know, very, you know, buttoned up, let's say. He said, no, no, nein, nein, ich explodiere nicht, nein, nein, I don't explode at all. No, no, no. I especially don't explode with my wife or my boss. And so Arnie thought, why did he mention his wife and his boss? So Arnie said, well, how would that be if you would explode with your wife and your boss a little bit? And the guy started to, Arnie said, maybe that would help your tumor, according to your dream. So the long story short, the guy started to be a little more explosive in his life. And he started to explode a little bit more with his wife. He started to explode a little bit more with his boss. His tumor ended up getting better. It was medicine for his tumor. So we could say there's an explosion that's happening. But that doesn't go along with his one-sided idea. It's going like, it's pulling him off course. When he turned in the direction of this, it actually not only made his tumor better, it made his life a little more exciting. He got a little less buttoned up. I'm not sure his wife liked it. Afterwards, Arnie had to develop a way of using this work in relationships. Yeah, so, because that often happened as people start being, you know how that happens. You start being yourself, and the people close to you aren't necessarily in favor of that. Yeah, okay. Things that are symptoms or disturbances in our life are actually not only terrible pathological things that need to be fixed, they're also things that are leading us towards our wholeness. That's a really central thing. So let's talk about causality for a second. Yes, symptoms and disturbances are not just pathological problems that need to be fixed. They are also experiences that are leading us towards our wholeness. Now, this is a key thing. You've been studying or already finished studying psychology and, right, a lot of, right, you look at the DSM-5 and you're going to find a lot of pathological things that need to be fixed, right? You're going to be here, people are going to have a lot of pathological things that need to be fixed, right? We could name them Alzheimer's, we could name them mental illness, right? There's like a lot of physical illness, there's a lot of pathology here if we look at things only pathologically. And in your training, you've learned to look at things pathologically, which is great, important, needed. But I'd like to invite you also to look at those things as invitations from, I'm not sure what, your dreams, your dreaming process, the Tao, God, I don't know where that comes from, inside or outside, but let's just call them invitations toward wholeness. It's a different way of looking at things. And that's the basic way that we're looking at things here. Or that's an important way that we're looking at things here, in addition to the pathological model. So I'm going to talk about that in terms of causality. You know about causality? Aristotle talked about 4 kinds of causality. He said, what's the cause, for instance, of a building being built? He says there's the material cause, right? The wood and the glass, that's the material that caused this building to be built. That's called the material cause. There's the formal cause. It's the form that this building has. The architect envisioned a form. That's the formal cause of this building to be built. Aristotle also said there's the efficient cause, right? The carpenters came and they started hammering nails. Efficient causality is what we normally think of as causality. Efficient causality, what caused something. In other words, this is moving in this direction because this hit it. That's what we normally think of as causality, right? But Aristotle broke it down a little bit more precisely. So this kind of causality, efficient causality, is the basic kind of causality that's behind the medical model, right? There's a problem. What caused that problem? Something caused the problem. If you get rid of that cause, the problem should go away, right? What caused the heart disease? Plaque. So if you get rid of the plaque by taking Lipitor, then the heart disease should go away, right? Very important. But only one kind of causality. Now, Aristotle said there's a third kind of causality, a fourth kind of causality, a very interesting one. He called it final cause, or teleos, teleology. The teleos is the goal. So this is going in this direction, not just because this is moving it, but because it's trying to go in a certain direction. There's the final goal or the final cause. In other words, this building was being built so people could live here. That's the final goal or the final cause of why the building is built, right? That's very interesting. So when we're looking at the problems here that people have, we're not just looking at what caused the problem, but also, what is it for? Where is it leading them? What's the point of it? How's everybody doing? You following me so far? This is somebody's physical symptom. Let's say this is somebody's relationship issues. Let's say this is somebody's dreams. Let's say this is the problem that somebody sees in the world. They read the newspaper and they think, ugh, what a terrible problem that is, right? So you've got all of these things. This is the blocks that they have in their creativity. You have all of these things, and these things we normally think of as discrete entities. In other words, separate issues that have nothing to do with each other. Okay? Now, if we think of things in terms of that background flow that I was talking about before, we notice actually that there's a wave that's happening, and that these things are actually just the manifestations of that wave. That actually there's something happening deep down under that we're not able to see. This is what Lao Tzu said. The Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. The one that we're seeing is not the real flow. There's something happening down underneath. And these things are the manifestations of that. I know this is kind of a weird way of thinking about things, and you probably weren't expecting this kind of a training. So I apologize in advance. Well, I guess halfway through. But it's actually mind-blowing when it actually comes into practice, I just have to say. That these things are actually connected somehow, like that guy's dream and his tumor. and his relationship problem and his problem at work. That these things are not just discrete entities. They are actually connected by the background flow. So the basic idea is that every problem actually contains the seed of its own solution. Every problem contains the seed of its own solution. We're going to see that again and again and again and again. And I want to give some examples of that. So it's not just some weird, heady spiritual thing and you're going to leave here thinking, what was that guy talking about anyway? I'm going to give some concrete examples, okay? I was teaching a workshop in the UK years ago, and this woman volunteered to work. She came into the middle, and I said, what do you want to work on? And she said, I want to work on the incest that my grandfather perpetrated on me from the time I was 4 years old until I was a teenager. And I thought, ooh, that's kind of a big thing for somebody to say. She didn't know any of those people, and she didn't know me. And I thought that's kind of a heavy thing. And I said, wow, that's a big thing. Have you ever worked on this before? And she said, yes, I've gone to therapists for many years, but it never worked. Just talking about it never helped. So I said, so how would you like to work on it that would be different than just talking about it? And in that moment, I looked over at her, and it was like she wasn't there. They call that dissociation, right? You know all about that, right? Yeah. Suddenly, she wasn't there. She had that far-off, glazed look in her eye that is so common. And so, of course, I did what anybody would do. I tried to contact her, right? I tried to talk to her. The more I talked to her, the more far away she got. I tried to do different techniques that would help her with her dissociation, and nothing happened. Then I remembered that she said that talking didn't help. So I thought, what the hell am I going to do? Here I am in a foreign country. Does my liability insurance apply over here? What are these people going to think? What am I going to be able to? And then I remembered, I woke up as if from my own trance, and I remembered I'm a process worker. And I remembered, oh, there's something happening. I wonder what's actually happening. And then I started to notice what was actually happening. And I noticed that she was standing there not just unable to speak, not just with a far-off look in her eye, but she was very slowly rocking side to side. And I thought, something's happening. So I said to her, wow, you're rocking side to side. And as I said that, the rocking got a little bit bigger. And I thought, thank God, that's contact, right? When you say something and somebody actually does something differently, that means that there's some kind of contact there, right? So I said, rocking, wow, you're really rocking side to side. So she started to do that more. I said, just follow that and do that do whatever is happening. She started to go even more. I said, whoa, yes, follow that movement. She started to do that. Now if you're noticing, my arms are also moving a little bit. That wasn't happening before. I said, Oh, arms moving. When that happened, she started moving her arms more. I'm going to not go through the whole thing. It took a long time. But after a while, she started to go like this. So I thought, oh, there's something happening. My hypothesis was she's trying to hit away her grandfather, right? So this is process work is partly the scientific method. You see what's happening. The scientific method is you notice phenomenon, you make a hypothesis about it, and then you make an experiment to see if that hypothesis is correct, right? So I noticed this happening. The hypothesis was she's hitting away her grandfather. So I put my hand up in the path of her hand to see if she would hit me. I thought that would be great. She's going to learn to fight against her grandfather. When I did that, she went like that. She went right over my hand. So I thought maybe I didn't put my hand in the right place. I put my hand, she did it again. She went right over my hand. Even though my hand was right in her path, she went right over it like that. Another hypothesis bites the dust. So I thought, okay, so what else is going on? So this time, instead of doing that, I helped her. When her hand went by, I supported it like that. And then she started to go like that. And then she said, I'm throwing salt. No, she said, I'm throwing something over my shoulder. I thought, oh my God, she's talking. I said, you're throwing something over your shoulder. What are you throwing over your shoulder? She did it a few more times. She said, I'm throwing a salt shaker over my shoulder. And I said, wow. Why would somebody throw a salt shaker over their shoulder? And she said, well, people throw a salt shaker over their shoulder when something bad happened and they don't want it to happen again. And I thought, wow, in the United States, people just throw salt, but maybe in the UK, they throw salt shakers. I don't know, right? So I said, give me a second. I went to the kitchen of the seminar house, and I said, and I got a salt shaker, and I gave it to her. And I said, here you are. And she threw the salt shaker over her shoulder, and she said, I'm done with it now. She was wide awake. No trance anymore, no dissociation. She threw it over her shoulder and she said, I'm done with it now. I said, really? She said, yes, I'm done with it. And then I said, excuse me, I'm so sorry to bug you, but in the United States, we throw salt over our shoulder, not salt shaker. Why do you? And she said, wow. She said, that's true. She said, here too, we throw salt over our shoulder, not salt shaker. So I said, so why did you throw a salt shaker over your shoulder? And she started to laugh. She said, a salt shaker, a salt shaker. I threw an assault shaker over my shoulder. She said, I didn't realize that. I threw the assault shaker over my shoulder. She said, I'm done. I kept in touch with her. She came to my seminars for years afterwards. And she told me that she was really done. Oh, I forgot to say a really important thing. At the very beginning of the work, I noticed her earrings. She had earrings that were little witch earrings. They were the cutest things in the world. They were joined. There were two parts of the earrings joined at the hip, and at the bottom part were legs with a broomstick. And when she moved, the legs and the broomstick would move. They were so cute. I wish I had a pair of them, even though I don't wear earrings. They were so cute. And I asked her about it at the beginning, and she said, "Oh, those are my witchy earrings." And then at the end, after she said she threw the assault shaker over her shoulder, she said, "Now that's magic." She said, "That's magic." And then Years later, she told me that she started to be a witch, actually. She joined a Wiccan community and started to learn about the nature side of her personality. And she said she was done with the assault. Now, what happened there? We followed what was happening instead of thinking of it as a problem. Yes, dissociation is a big problem, but it was also leading her in a direction of something happening. I'm going to tell you another quick story. Okay. My father died about 2 months ago after he had I'll tell you another time about his death. There was an incredible experience with his dying process. That's going to be for a different training. But about a year and a half before he died, he had a heart valve replacement. And he was in, I asked him if I should come and visit when he had his thing to help him. He said, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I'm going to be out in 2 days. And then after like a week or 10 days, he was still in ICU. And so I flew over and I asked the doctors what was going on. And they said that he had ICU delirium for days and days. Now apparently in ICU, by the way, means intensive care unit of a hospital. So he was in the intensive care unit. And apparently when you're in the intensive care unit, you get something called ICU delirium. It's basically like being in Guantanamo Bay, right? You're in one room, you can't move, the light never changes, you're looking at the same thing again and again, and after a while you start hallucinating, right? That's a common thing, apparently, ICU delirium. So he was having ICU delirium, and he would get agitated with his ICU delirium, and he would start getting agitated, and then the doctors would sedate him for his agitation, and then he would like eventually the next day kind of wake up from his sedation, get a little bit more awake, and then start hallucinating again, and then get more and more agitated, and then they would sedate him again, and this had happened for like a week. So I said to the doctors, hello, my name is Dr. Lane Arye, and I'm his son, and this is what I do for a living, and please don't sedate him anymore. And they said, no, you don't understand. This is, and I said, well, I understand very well what you're telling me, but do me a favor, don't sedate him today. And they said, okay. So after a while, he started to come out of his sedation, and he started to hallucinate. And he started to say to me, oh, the children. And at first I didn't realize he was hallucinating. And I said, yeah, my children, they're doing well, they love you, you know. But that wasn't what he was interested in. The children. He started getting more and more agitated. I said, what children? He said, the children over there. I looked over and there weren't any children. There was a blank wall with monitors on it. So I said, oh yeah, the children. Those children, right, following what was happening instead of pathologizing it. I said, what about the children? He says, the class needs to start. I said, okay, yeah, we should start the class. And then he started to get really agitated, and he started looking around, and he started going like this. I said, what are you looking for? My notes. My notes. I said, what notes? He said, my notes for the class. I said, oh, you're teaching the class. He said, of course. I said, well, hold on 1 second, and I got my notebook. And I said, okay, well, wait a minute. Yeah, how about you tell me what it is, and I'll write down your notes for you. And he started to relax. He said, okay. I said, okay, tell me what the class is about. He said, the functions of the body. Of course, he's not talking like this. He's talking like, he had pneumonia. The functions of the body. So, right, I'm not going to do that whole time or else it would make me sick. But the functions of the body, so I write down the functions of the body. I said, okay, so what are you going to teach? He said, the first function of the body is here. I said, okay, what do you do with that? He said, swallow. Now that was a very important function of the body because he was on a feeding tube because he wasn't able to do his swallowing thing. I said, oh, how does that go? He says, like this. And he starts to teaching himself how to swallow. After a while of that, I said, what's the next function of the body? He says, here, the lungs. I said, what's that function? He said, to cough. Now that was important because he had a lot of fluid in his lungs. He'd been lying there for the last 10 days after the operation. He had a lot of fluid in his lungs. He wasn't able to cough and get rid of his pneumonia so he could get better. I said, how does that go? Like this. And he starts like trying to cough. They'd been trying to teach him how to cough for 10 days, but he's been too sedated to actually do it. So we go through all of the different functions of the body, right? He talks about pooping. He talks about he talks about his legs. He was in a chair by now. He like says the legs. He like starts to pick up his legs just like a tiny little bit. The physical therapist had been trying to get him to do that, but they couldn't because he was so sedated, right? Eventually, he points down here. He said, very important, right? He had a catheter in him, right? Important for other things too, but yeah. So finally, after 45 minutes of this, I'm writing down every word he said. After 45 minutes of this, he looks at me with a different kind of a look in his eye. And he says, you tricked me. I said, what do you mean? He said, there were no children. There was no class. You tricked me. So I explained to him that actually I didn't trick him, that there was a class and that he needed to learn about the functions of the body and that he was teaching himself. He says, you are a very wise guy. So he never had ICU delirium again. So what's pathology and what's a process that's trying to happen? I was working, this was years ago, I was working with a guy who was dying of AIDS. I went to his home and thank God people don't die of AIDS anymore in this country. Yeah, back then it was a plague. Oh my God, everybody was dying. So I was working with this guy who was dying of AIDS, and I walked into his house, and he's sitting there with all of his family and his friends, and he says, where am I? Where am I? And his family says, you're here in your living room. He says, where am I? Where am I? He said, you're in your house. Where am I? Right? Now, who's the one who's out of it there? right? Is it the guy who says, "Where am I?" Or the family who keep saying things even though it doesn't make any impact, right? Who's the one who's really needs help in that situation? So, where am I? Am I on this side or the other side? And they say, "Oh, you're in Northwest Portland. That's on the west side of the river, not the east side of the river." And after a while, I've had enough of this, and I go up to him and I say, "Where are you?" And he goes, "Oh." Right? So that's impact. That's contact. Right? Instead of trying to get somebody to be where you are, it's our job to be where they are. Right? So when I went where he, when they tried to get him where they were, in this consensus reality, there was no contact. But when they went where he was, then there's contact. Or when I went where he was, then there's contact. I said, "Where are you?" He went, "Oh." I said, "Are you on this side or the other side?" He went, "Oh." And he stopped asking the questions. A couple of days later, he was on that side. Yeah. So that's right? So following where things are going, instead of thinking, "Ooh, things are going in a bad place. We have to make them go the way we want them to go." Instead, follow how things are going. Let that lead you. Okay. Going in the direction of the flow instead of against it, even if that means going in the direction of the disturbance. And that can be scary, I have to say.
The thing that I keep wondering is, what do you do if someone says they're suicidal? How do you follow that?
Well, the first thing you do is you find out, do they have a plan and a means and whatever, right? Of course, right? Yeah. And you do all of the normal things about finding out what there is to live for, and all of the stuff that we've all learned, right? All important. And at some point, what part of them is dying? That's one question, right? Because in a way, if you look at things symbolically, death is something that happens all the time. There's always things inside of us that are dying. There's things inside of us that need to die. Right? So that's another, I'm not saying this is the only way to look at things or the only way to work, but it expands your repertoire. Right? What part needs to die, maybe? Or also, what's it like? There's another question, what's it like to be dead? Right? I've worked with people who are who have talked about wanting to die, and I say, "Oh, wow. So what would it be like if you were dead?" And they say, "Oh, peace." And in that moment, they feel that peace that they've been waiting for. So, and help them to unfold that. Yes.